Hello, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. I won this game about 3 minutes ago. A game in 10 minutes per side. I had the white pieces. Now, some things about the game before we get going. Look at the late break around here, and that's move 10. A little bit on the late side, not much, but slightly on the late side. And that's good. I like to see that there's hard fought and even throughout the first 10 full moves. And um, my opponent ended up resigning. There's some cool things that about this game that my opponent did that earned my respect, both by how the game was played, and we'll get to it. It's it's best if I save it for later. So without further ado, ado. Without further ado, I played I played d4, d5, c4, e6. This is Queen's Gambit Declined. This is the most classical um, way to arrive at Queen's Gambit Declined. I played knight c3, and after knight f6, knight f3, and g6. Let's take a second here. So it's here with black to move. Some moves would be like bishop d7, knight to c6, and there's nothing all that wrong about there's nothing all that wrong about pawn to g6 making way for the fianchetto. It wouldn't be my cup of tea personally because of how I played in the game. But also bishop e7 is strong. Bishop d6 is probably not so great because of pawn to c5. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't see that as a great place for black's bishop. So these are some of the moves we might see. Let's do this over without the king highlight. I could have just unhighlighted him. Oh well. Just trying to avoid some bumps here. Bishop e7, bishop d4. So the overall theme of all this is black's got a lot of options at this point. This is like one of those points in the decision tree where it really branches out. There's a lot of different ways black can play solidly. G6 makes way for the fianchetto. Now here with white to move, I'm kind of not in a mean way, but in a competitive way, poking fun at the fact that the bishop will come to g7. I don't mean that mean-spirited, but I do this by playing c5. And what I want to explain here is my opponent has taken time out to play g6. And it's clear that my opponent might play g7 next, which is fine. But it also really handicaps and handcuffs my opponent on the queen side. If I play c5 and then we see g7, it's going to be very difficult to unseat or disrupt the eventuality of a very large white pawn chain from pretty much the center to the queen side. I think we saw this in the game, so let's go forward. Pawn to c5. Now, really, the move for black here is probably to keep the bishop here and somehow dismantle this grip right away. But the inertia of having played pawn to g6 brings black's bishop to g7. And now the pawn on c5 is strong, very strong. This could be a long-term issue in the game. So bishop g7 is not a bad move, but really, how does black intend to solve d4 and c5, especially c5? And that's what I had to think about that. It's a nuanced point, but all stems back to g6, and I think it's an interesting point to ponder in your games. If you can lock up the center in a way that your opponent's bishop cannot aid breaking that lockup, then consider that. Kingside castles, h4. I'm up. No dallying or wasting time to get a really strong attack going here. I realize my king's in the center, But this king behind a pawn wall of blacks, behind a pawn wall of white, especially if e3 occurs, the king's in the center. He's not going to be attacked by a queen or a rook on the e file for a very long time. Right, so this is not a worry. Uh, you know, bishop a5 check. Well, just look at the line that it takes to get there. Queen a5 check. Maybe that's a little bit more realistic, but if my knight moves somewhere at some point. But the king's perfectly safe right here on e1, surrounded by his pieces, and with the option still to castle to either side, as the king hasn't moved, nor has either rook. So at some point, a queenside castle could occur. At some point, a kingside castle could occur, and then white could stay or remain at with his king at e1. All right, there's a little bit extra there, but you get the idea. Pawn to h6. It's a good move. What else to say? It's just a good move. You put the question to this bishop, who can't backpedal to h4 because he's got his own pawn there. It's a good move. And I eventually decided I'll play to f4 rather than maybe d2, or exchanging pieces on f6 to give black the choice of how to recapture. No, I didn't want that. So I played bishop to f4. Part of the reasoning behind bishop to f4 is that now the bishop is also aiming at c7. Do we have a knight nearby? We do. On c3, knight b5 here could be devastating against black, with the bishop supporting a knight takes c7 kind of thing, and the rook being undeveloped and stuck in the corner there at a8. It's a loose idea, but I don't know if it came to fruition in this game, but it's a distant threat. So, plus, more broadly speaking, the bishop on f4 is safe enough and very active. So, a strong and active piece. Let's look. Okay, so c6 occurred. So after 8 full moves, we're looking at the chessboard. The bishop on f4 is the strongest piece on the board. He's the most valuable piece on the board. Right? Huge. So I liked where I placed my bishop after he was asked a question on g5. He came to f4 and is just very, very powerful. Very valuable. My past self is joking with me. So as valuable as that bishop might be on f4, bishop to d6 is also extremely valuable and strong. He's at an outpost. Normally we think of knights at outposts. Doesn't have to be that way. This bishop has a strong outpost. Has a strong outpost on d6. He's attacking a higher value piece, and the f4 square is now vacated. Who knows? Maybe not immediately, but someday there could be an attacking piece placed on f4. So I like bishop d6. Even as strong as he was on f4, he still has a lot of scope. He's attacking multiple pieces and well defended. All right, rook to e8. It's a centering move, and it prevents losing the exchange on f8. Where did I play? Queen d3. I'm going to show I'm not going to go into all the calculations that the computer is finding, but I'll show their those are the calculations from the computer. Queen d3 seems to be some sort of misstep because of b6. I'm not all too worried about it, but we'll go back to review and continue. Now, offering the trade on f8. What did I do? I probably pressed the attack in some way. Some of these moves are not the best, most accurate moves, so we'll kind of bypass them for now. We'll bypass them, and bishop takes d6, pawn takes d6, queen to f4, e3. Right, so white has this advancing pawn wall, as well as an advanced knight, another advanced pawn that's not part of the pawn wall. This knight is on the queen side, but could become relevant soon enough. The queen is aiming at black's own pawn wall, and there is support from the rook on h1. The bishop is probably a little bit more out of the game or out of play here than it would initially seem. Bishop to e2, and then maybe he can help attack against h5, but even that comes after the g4 pawn is moved, and if they lock up, doesn't the h5 pawn have the g pawn supporting it? So this bishop is quite a bit removed from the action. And bishop to h3 it's not a bad move, but there's nothing special or great about it either. So white's trying to build up an attack with the move pawn to e3. I'm not sure maybe not. White, that's not building up an attack, but it is protecting the pawn at f4. The pawn at f4 now protected can help white go forward with an attack, so that his king is also more safe as a result of that pawn being safer. Knight a6, g5 is correct, and then super blunder, horrible blunder. This happens while playing chess sometimes. It just doesn't make me or my opponent or anybody bad. But knight takes e5. This is definitely a blunder. It's indicated as a mistake, but then g takes f6 check, loses black's queen, and then we're gonna grab the knight immediately thereafter with check. And one thing though, the blunders, no extra points for blunders either, but my opponent, I'm looking here, I have enough time, I have enough material, I can get this done. My opponent made a very respectful resignation after the move, pawn to a3. Have you ever seen, how often does a game, my opponent resigned here in a very respectful time. How often does a game end after such a quiet move as a3? So that makes this game kind of special to me. That this is the type of move that I haven't had in my game for very long anyway. It's more recent to my development as a chess player. But pawn to a3 just simply prevents the knight from attacking. It's a good prophylactic move, and you play it, and white's doing well. So that my opponent resigned after that, there's an understanding there, I think. And so anyway, that's it. I was really glad to have played this game. I was really glad to have shared this game with you. I thought I did a good job of skipping past most of the more inaccurate play, as people sometimes call the fruit punch, because there's these colors that could be red, peach, yellow, orange, green, and then occasionally a blue one sneaks in there. That's fruit punch. That's just inaccurate chess. Doesn't make anybody a bad person though. And there's something else about that. Oh, I did a good job of sort of moving past it, so I'll plan to continue to do that. All right. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Have a great night.